lecture of the session. And I'll request the organizers to please share the screen of Dr. Kameshwar Prasad. Once again, needs absolutely no introduction to anyone in the country. He has been one of the stroke pioneers again, and the evidence-based stroke medicine. You know, throughout his life, he has talked about it and taught everybody about evidence-based medicine. Presently, he is the director of the Rajendra Institute of Medical Sciences in Ranchi. His area is stroke, in addition to other things, but he has done pioneering work in stroke genetics, stem cell therapeutics, and of course, as I already said about the statistical part of it. But today's talk has a relevance that much before Tenecteplase came into the guidelines of American Association or even Indian guidelines, he had a lot of faith in this molecule. And he talked about it at a time when people didn't believe in Tenecteplase. So I think he's the most appropriate person to talk today about the Tenecteplase in stroke. Over to you, Professor Kameshwar Prasad.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Subhas. I'm sure the topic reminds you of our debate in Delhi,
yes.
which we, each one of us, we tried to convince the other side. But happy to see that you have, I think, accepted my side. There is no disclosure with relevant to this topic. I think this has been discussed so many times that I don't want to get into details. First, remember, first generation thrombolytics were streptokinase and urokinase. Second generation, a tissue plasminogen activator and pro-urokinase. And third generation is one of these is Tenecteplase. So let us start from basic science. You know, basic science, basically Tenecteplase is also alteplase, but it is a genetically modified alteplase. And that modification is at 3 sites, and the amino acids are changed. With this change, some properties has been acquired by this new compound called Tenecteplase, that half-life is 6 times longer, fibrin specificity is 15 times more, and inhibition by plasminogen activator inhibitor is 80 times less. So as a result, what happens is you don't have to give infusion which goes on for 1 hour. You can give IV push, and since it has higher fibrin specificity, so it works like fibrinolytic, but doesn't, or at least is not expected to cause as much bleed as alteplase does. So with this basic science background, if you look at the journey of Tenecteplase, it is not a new compound in that sense because it was discovered in 1993. And remember, this has been approved by FDA of USA in the year 2000, so 21 years ago. And the dose was 0.5 milligram, and it still is 0.5 milligram per kg. In stroke, it is taking time, and I will come to this later on. 2001, animal studies started in stroke. 2005, first human studies started. First publication perhaps is in human beings, stroke 2010. And then what really attracted attention of people is this NEJM publication by Parsons et al. In 2012. And then another trial in 2015. Relatively big trial in Northwest trial, which was published in 2017, and Extend IA in 2018. But I should start with something which is as new as last month. Last month, myself and Lynn from Mayo Clinic, we published an editorial, which is accompanying another bridging trial, which is for basilar artery. So some of you will read it. It is has not yet come in print, but it is already published in electronic form. And the title says Tenecteplase prior to mechanical thrombectomy, ready for prime time. And the reason I want to share with you is that myself and Lynn had slight difference of opinion on this. So we said, look here, looking at the same evidence, different guidelines may recommend differently. And that reflects what we call values and preferences both of the society, of the scientists, and maybe of the patients. So same evidence may convince some to accept this, and same evidence may require some other people to ask for more evidence. So that is because the circumstances differ. So if you read this editorial, this sentence is already there, that people differ looking at the same evidence based on the societal values, the preferences of patients and physicians, and given the same evidence, different choices may be made. So as you know, my choice will be to use Tenecteplase, though for bridging, there is only one trial, Extend IEA. There are at least 4 trials for Elteplase. But I think bridging is going out of favor gradually because of comparison between bridging and no bridging. Whatever it is, Tenecteplase certainly has, time has come. And another paper, which I think some of you may have read, this is also last month, July 2021. I know you can't read it, but I will read it for you because this is a debate which has been actually published in Stroke, and Putala and Case has given, so they are balancing comments on this. But what I like is it starts with criteria. 8 criteria are generally recognized as desirable to support use of new pharmacotherapy. It says, what are those 8 criteria? Well-characterized mechanism of action, strong preclinical data, evidence of benefit and safety in a closely related clinical condition, then important practical advantages over existing agents, clinical efficacy, and then endorsement by national practice guidelines, support from drug regulatory authorities, clinical effectiveness demonstrated in routine care. So 8 criteria is there. And what they write, I may not fully agree with that, but they write, we would suggest that if an agent meets at least 4 of these criteria, substantial support exists for adoption in routine clinical practice. And the next sentence is very important. Tenecteplase for acute ischemic stroke meets all 8 criteria. So this is a publication which you will be reading, or you may have read, as fresh as last month. So having read that, I don't think there is much more to be said about accepting Tenecteplase as an option. But I think I have time to take you through some of the evidence. So I will take you through. I can't see my timer, but let me know, Dr. Shabas, when I have to stop. So you see, one of the criteria said in closely related condition. You know, acute myocardial infarction. Yeah, I can see that now. Acute myocardial infarction is a closely related condition. So grade people call it indirect evidence. And as you have seen in the criteria, it is closely related condition where you find evidence. And I will not take much time on this. Compared to Elteplase, it has the same degree of efficacy. And when you look at hemorrhage, then actually the hemorrhage is slightly less. So I will not spend time on this. Major bleeding is certainly less. Intracranial hemorrhage is probably similar, but the hemorrhages were so small that it didn't have power to say one way or the other. But major bleeding was definitely less, with p-value of less than 0.0002. Now, so coming to ischemic stroke, we published a meta-analysis on 21st April. It was accepted on 21st April 2018. And it was first, as you can imagine, electronic publication. We did a meta-analysis, and our senior resident, Dr. Telangana, did an excellent job. I think she did very laudable work on this. I certainly remember how hard she worked for this, and we published it in 2018. But just a few days later, this paper came in New England Journal of Medicine, which is on the same topic. So one of the downside of meta-analysis is that by the time it gets published, you may be out of date. So we had to do another analysis. This was a very important paper because you can see the large arteries were getting recanalized with greater efficiency with Tenecteplase. So I won't spend too much time on this, but primary outcome, which was reperfusion, occurred in 22% in Tenecteplase arm versus 10% in tenecteplase arm, a difference of 12%, which is a huge difference. It is both satisfying the criteria of non-inferiority and superiority. So in this study, at least, tenecteplase appeared superior in causing reperfusion, though the 90-day functional outcome was more or less similar, and even intracerebral hemorrhage occurred in one patient in each group. And this is MRS scale, which shows that tenecteplase has actually slightly more number of patients or percentage of patients, and MRS 0 and 1. So we updated our meta-analysis after this, and I will take you quickly through this. Now, so after the Campbell study was published, we had 5 studies. We did a meta-analysis of all the 5 studies. We looked at the quality of the studies, and this is what you will typically see in Cochrane reviews, that how good are the studies. Green means they are low risk of bias, red means high risk of bias. So except for blinding, which was not possible in some studies, all others are very good quality studies. So when you combine them, that was actually in favor of tenecteplase, but it was just significant, p-value of 0.05. And some people ask always a question that, you see, NIHS score of 6 of these patients were relatively well, but when you look at other trials, the NIHS score is 14, 12, 10. So these typical patients which you will see in your practice. Excellent functional outcome, very similar in both. Good functional outcome, which is MRS 0.2. It is also slightly favoring tenecteplase, but statistically not significant. So we can say both are similar. Both are similar also in intracerebral hemorrhage, though slightly in favor of tenecteplase. And symptomatic intracerebral hemorrhage also similar in both. Mortality also similar. I won't read too much about slight trend in favor of tenecteplase. So evidence is good. Tenecteplase, people ask about dose. 0.25 milligram per kg is what is now generally accepted. There should be no problem about this. It offers improved recanalization. And good thing is that it is approved in India. You know, the problem with other countries is, particularly in USA, and I have given grand round in New York also on tenecteplase, and I can see on their face that they are really stopped because of not FDA of USA not approving this. We are lucky in this that our Drug Controller General of India has approved this. So people often asked, we do non-inferiority trial. What about non-inferiority? So I ask you to remember, low dose versus standard dose. This was considered, this was used or done as a non-inferiority trial. And the margin was here, this 1.14 dotted line, which you see the vertical line, which is the non-inferiority margin. In our meta-analysis, when we did this, this abundantly or very well meets the criteria of non-inferiority. I showed this slide in one of the presentation in PGI Chandigarh, and then my residents, they asked, Dr. Prasad, how can we use it? Most of the textbooks don't write in favor of tenecteplase. I said, which textbook you are reading? So those of you who are, technology savvy, nowadays nobody reads Adams or I think Bradley or any such textbook. They read what is electronic, and that is very popular one is Up to Date. So I looked at Up to Date, and I found that yes, it is written as an investigational therapy. So I was, after our meta-analysis, I was so convinced that I thought this should change. How will you change it? So I contacted UpToDate through email. I got it through one of my friend. And John looks after the neurology part. So I said, John, you know, UpToDate is used also by residents in India. It is approved for both MI and stroke in India, but for your country, it is only approved for MI. Now, the question is, what do practitioners do if they read, and the residents particularly, they read UpToDate? So what do they do? So please look at our meta-analysis and change your text. Now, changing UpToDate is not easy because even American physicians told me that they don't easily agree. But we had made a great profile in our publication, and they looked at it. And you see, I had to keep on looking. They will not respond to your email frequently, but in April, he said, Dr. Prasad, I'm looking at your meta-analysis and we will see. In July, when I checked in 2019, they had changed. So I wrote to my friend, Gordon Guyatt, that look here, our efforts had made a difference. Now, what Tenecteplase, what used to be investigational therapy in UpToDate, now they write, although not licensed in the US for thrombolysis in acute ischemic stroke, moderate to high quality evidence. This was from our grade table. The intravenous Tenecteplase, he has similar efficacy and safety as compared to Elteplase, but they made a big mistake. You know, this is what happens if not using this treatment. They wrote dose 0.4 milligram per kg, and they put the maximum of Elteplase, which is 90 milligram. People will die if you give 90 milligram. So I had to immediately write to them, look here, sorry, you made a mistake in the dose. We wrote in favor of 0.25 milligram per kg and maximum 25 milligram. How did you make 90 milligram? Immediately next day they changed it. Remember, reference 61 is the meta-analysis by our resident Telangana. So our meta-analysis is referred there. Now, if you look at why US FDA has not approved, you can't understand the reason. Because Elteplase was approved for myocardial infarction in 87 by US FDA. After 9 years in 1996, they approved Elteplase. On Tenecteplase, they have approved in 2000. But for stroke, after 21 years, it has not yet approved. Now, I can understand they have certain rules, regulations. They want single big trial which will show superiority of Tenecteplase. You see, non-inferiority is something you are digesting very much. So you may be aware that in Apixaban, they have approved the dose of 150 milligram, which was superiority demonstration, but they didn't approve 110 milligram because it was non-inferiority, which is, I am not able to understand. European agency accepts non-inferiority. Even in epilepsy or migraine, they always want superiority. So that superiority in a single trial has not yet been demonstrated to satisfaction of US FDA. But I think it is high time they should look at the data in a meta-analysis and think about it. So after we had published all this in 2019, this stroke journal also wrote evidence that Tenecteplase is non-inferior to Elteplase in acute ischemic stroke. And they give almost similar forest plot, which we had given. And you have already heard a lot of trials are already going on. One of the trial is timeless trial, which is perhaps going to close in 2022. So we will have more data. Now, what I'm saying is more data does not mean that you can't use it. You see, when Elteplase was approved, more data was required, which is okay. And many people kept doing trial. International stroke trial 3 was actually trial of Elteplase. So more data is better, but doesn't mean that if you are convinced, you can't use it. And if your country has approved it, there is no reason why you should not use it. And there is abundance of studies which is giving adequate evidence to use it in place of Elteplase. So to summarize, Tenecteplase, at least is non-inferior to tenecteplase as a thrombolytic agent for acute ischemic stroke. Time window, unfortunately, our director, DCGI has given 3 hours. Now, it is unfortunate that our Indian company is not able to launch a trial which extends the time window to, I think, after listening to Dr. Padma, they should better do a wider window than up to 4.5 hours and demonstrate it works in wider time window. But I don't know when it will come. But certainly, as people say, off-label, we use so many things off-label. I will be quite convinced to use it off-label up to 4.5 hours. But our DCGI has approved it up to 3 hours. Dose, people confused about the dose. I have no confusion. I have looked at the studies. Most studies have used 0.25 milligram per kg body weight. It has to be administered over few seconds. IV push, no need for infusion. There is moderate to high quality evidence. Cost is much lower. When it comes to our country, cost is very important. And therefore, we should use it. I have no doubt that our patients will benefit at a lower cost, and this should be practiced certainly in those areas where this is available, and I have no doubt about the certainty of evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. I think that was very, very clarifying talk. In fact, by this time, I can tell you that Tenecteplase has already found its way in the routine practice. It is most of the centers are offering it to patients these days. And I remember that you have been one of the early torch bearers, maybe along with you, Dr. UK Mishra also. You stood your ground even when there was a severe opposition. I remember once one of the, I think one of the foreign speakers was from Germany, Dr. Peter. He was very, very offended. And but you stood your ground, and time has proved you right. I have one question, sir, which we face in our situation. That the DCGI gave approval to Tenecteplase much before it came in any of the guidelines in India, based on that some data from India, and it's already very old data. Now I think it's more than 7-8 years. The dose they approved was 0.2 milligram, and the window was 3. Now we know today we are using 0.25 and we are going beyond window. Would we be any legal problem, or you think off-label we can use it? What is your opinion? It's often asked this question, that suppose if a patient comes at 4 hours, would you still offer him Tenecteplase in a dose of 0.25? I'm sure you must have thought about it.
Yes, I have thought about it. Beyond 3 hours, you have to take decision in confidence with the patient. So basically, the problem will come if patients actually are dissatisfied. If you have explained everything and taken this decision in consultation with the patient, as what is called shared decision making. You see, shared decision making is the key. If you have done shared decision making, I don't see there is any problem. But whenever you are in doubt, that patient may actually sue you sometime, then better to stick to 3 hours. But
Yeah.
this doesn't happen commonly. As you see, you use azathioprine is a off-label medicine in multiple sclerosis. We use it in tons. We never faced any problem. So many off-label uses of. If there is one country where there is maximum off-label use of medicines, I think India will be at the top. So,
No doubt about it.
yes.
So can you briefly tell us about this non-inferiority versus superiority? Also, only you can tell us about that. How does it help in our clinical practice? This non-inferiority versus superiority.
That is a bit
No, in
statistically
brief, in one
loaded
line
question.
for common
Yeah,
neurologists like us.
in one line, I can tell you that what you have to, when you do the trial, you have to set a hypothesis, right? That hypothesis can be either that A is superior to B, or it can be A is similar to B, or A is not less than B, right? So
Yes.
non-inferiority is not less than B. So this is what to do this, you have to do sample size calculation according to your hypothesis. So one difference is that sample size is different. And when you analyze the data, then instead of routine p-value, in case of non-inferiority, you have to You saw that dot and the line, which is confidence interval, right? So
Yeah.
confidence interval has to be looked at when you interpret and there has to be a margin, non-inferiority margin. Now, problem is that you have to set the margin before starting the trial. If you set it afterwards, it may be manipulated. So these are the differences.
So,
Superiority trial starts with different hypotheses, different sample size calculation, p-value. People now ask for confidence interval in superiority also. Whereas
so
in
is it easier? Is it
non-inferiority,
easier?
you have to do it
Is it easier to do a non-inferiority trial? Is
easier
it
to prove
easier to do?
non-inferiority.
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
And
Yeah.
it depends on case to case, but
Yes.
yes, for companies it is easier.
Yeah.
And it is much easier. Just imagine if you are comparing A and B and your hypothesis is not inferior to B,
Okay.
nobody takes A and nobody takes B, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the two will be similar. So what
Okay.
companies do is they maximize non-compliance.
Yeah.
So superior thing also looks similar. So there can be manipulation in non-inferiority. That is why US FDA has still not got convinced about this.
Okay, sir.
European agencies are convinced about it.
Yeah. Any other question from the panelists? You can make. We have 1 or 2 minutes. Dr. Padma, Dr. Vijay Sharma, anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please, please.
Subhash, will you?
Dr. Padma, please.
So, thank you, sir, for that, amazing lecture as always. So, in fact, I just one comment and also your opinion on this, that in fact, in the pandemic, we have used more, Tenecteplase and Alteplase in our management of acute ischemic stroke because of, the green corridors and the timelines, which were already compromised. A push was always better than an infusion over 1 hour. So, in fact, that data is being analyzed, sir, even between the first and second waves. Almost a lot of our acute ischemic strokes, we actually only give tenecteplase. So, this very simple reason, you push it. And so you are actually trying
Yes.
to get that timeline, which already was compromised because of,
Yeah.
the pandemic and the corona issue. So I think this made a huge difference. And thanks to you that we have this thing on board with us, which was like a stitch in time.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
I
Thank you.
pushed it very hard with the medical superintendent. Is Dr. Rohit convinced or not? He was the one
No,
difficult
he
to
is
convince.
absolutely convinced. No, he's we are all a team. He's absolutely
Okay,
convinced.
okay, right.
Sir, now,
So maybe
sir,
you have convinced. I could not convince him. Yeah.
so thank you very much. I think that was a very, very interesting session. We had a
Okay,
lot of
very
learning.
good, very good.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. Thank you, all the speakers. Thank you, Dr. Padma. Thank you, Dr. Vijay Sharma. I think with that, I hand over to the organizer. Dr. Vijay, you would like to make a comment?
No. Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you everyone for such a wonderful session.
Would rule out.